right, good morning, everybody. Today is Friday, April 10th, 2015, and this is Before the First Cup with Jules here on UCY.TV. Happy Friday, everybody. We finally made it. It's been a very long, very exhausting couple weeks for me, so I'm really happy I made it. It is 55 degrees and overcast here in upstate New York, so we have definitely broken a barrier. The Arctic cold is staying north for now. Well, hopefully that lasts. It looks like actually by next week we're going to be in the 60s, so that should be really awesome. All right, so where do we continue today? I don't know. It was a rough night for me yesterday. I think we're going to dig a little bit more and kind of take a right turn into some of the stuff that we looked at yesterday. The show yesterday was titled Biowarfare Bugs, Genetic Engineering, Vaccines, and Plum Island. So if you missed that one, make sure you go hit the UCY YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/UCY TV, and it does the show from yesterday, which was the 4/9/2015. We had looked at some of the fear porn. Of course, we all know that they are playing with to try and get us to line up and become part of their machine, to take the chip, to take the nanotechnology, to get the vaccines that we don't, the majority of the public doesn't realize are loaded with all these newfangled technologies that are letting the genie out of the bottle. A lot of the stuff, especially in the Ebola vaccines, I mean, we're talking about level 1 human trials now, so never been tried before. We looked at the 3D nano factory scaffolds that could be built inside your body to treat disease. How exciting is that? I know I'm getting ready for it. We also looked at Eric Traub, who is someone I ran across in doing some research from the day before yesterday's show to find a connection between Plum Island and some of this biowarfare that at one point, remember bubonic plague, of course, just appeared again down in the Southwest, this time in fleas that then infected prairie dogs, and I had postulated when they said that it had never been seen before in 1950, that somewhere around 1950, there probably would have been experiments with fleas at Plum Island. And yes, we found that connection with Eric Traub. And not only was Eric Traub a specialist and a veterinarian in infectious diseases and had been at Plum Island and had studied at Rockefeller University and lived right outside where Plum Island was, we also discovered that Eric Traub had been an Operation Paperclip German that they had brought over here. So that was a great connection, at least for me. Big puzzle piece went into place. Today, I think we are going to kind of start where we left off yesterday and then take a little bit of a turn to look at some of the databasing that is going on now. One of the things that I think I forgot to post, there was another database story that I wanted to catch here, and I'll have to remember where I put it now. Oh, damn, it was on my other computer upstairs. I'll have to see if I can find it. I do want to play this video, though. Let me see if I can pull myself in. This video that I played yesterday that I want to kick this show off with, just to refresh everybody's memory, and in case you missed it yesterday, you got to hear this because it just blew me away. All right, here we go. This is the one about the injectable 3D cell factories that will be able to go into your body to fight cancer and everything else, as well as make the arm grow out of your forehead. So let's see if this will play. I don't know. My computer's been giving me problems this morning. No stress. Here we go.
Eileen Lee fills a syringe with a saline solution that contains tiny rods made of silica. Those rods form the basis of a new method to fight everything from cancer to Ebola in the human body. David Mooney, a professor of bioengineering at Harvard, says the human immune system is the most efficient weapon on the planet to fight disease, but that sometimes it needs to be activated to respond to threats. That's where the rods come in.
One could inject these through a needle because they're so small. And then after they're in the body, they would be present in a fluid, a saline solution or salt solution. And then as that salt solution dissipated into the surrounding tissue, these particles would then collapse on each other and form this three-dimensional structure.
That three-dimensional structure is basically a makeshift laboratory which takes shape inside the body. First, the tiny lab plays the role of a trap, releasing drug molecules that were implanted into nanopores fitted in the rods to attract immune cells to the structure. Eileen Lee says it's like attracting a mouse with cheese.
We utilize these nanopores to release a factor that brings about millions and millions of immune cells to this local 3D structure. And there, the cells reside in the pores that are formed between the microparticles, and they're able to be then, subsequently programmed to do their job.
At this point, the tiny lab turns into a factory where these cells are reprogrammed and fitted with proteins designed to trigger an immune response in the body.
They will then migrate away from the scaffold, go to the nearest lymph node, and there they instruct the T cells and B cells to proliferate and to activate.
And then your immune system will increase or multiply this effect at several different steps as you move down the immune response.
And that's when the body kicks into action to start combating disease and infection. In animal studies, the research has proven highly effective. David Mooney says it will take years of research to translate their early successes in animal models into therapies for humans. But he's hopeful that his tiny cell factories will become a powerful weapon in the fight against cancer and infectious diseases.
Yeah, let's get excited about that. Hold on. Disconnect. So 3D cell factories, again, like we had mentioned yesterday, it's pretty much what Eric Drexler had been talking about, having these 3D scaffolds self-create within your body to then set up this little factory that will then produce substances or manipulate your cells, your DNA, your RNA, to then go and do whatever their bidding is. I mean, if that isn't disturbing to everybody, then I don't think you're ever going to wake up. That to me, and I mean, when we take a look at then this whole rash of all of these haven't been seen since 1950. Oh my God, we've never before seen this mixture of different organisms within this virus. I dug up a couple stories yesterday as we were talking, after we were talking about this on air, that swine flu, bird flu, influenza genes, when that all hit a few years ago, they were like, oh, never before seen. They've been mixed together. But I did remember this, and I found a story from 2013, hybrid flu created in lab from swine and bird influenza genes can go airborne. Oh, of course it can. The problem reaction solution's been going on for a long time, and they've got us now over a barrel with the threat of being able to wipe out humanity with the next newest, biggest, nastiest disease that, of course, has been created because of global warming, right? They always blame everything on global warming. Actually, that outbreak of, let me see if I see it here. I had mentioned it yesterday, and then I said I was going to find it in Japan. There was a major outbreak of, I think it was dengue fever in Japan that had happened as well last year. And they're like, wow, this is the first time we've seen an outbreak since World War II. Yeah, dengue fever in Japan. And of course, they blame that on global warming. So they're going to spin all this up, get us all afraid, make sure that there are pathogens everywhere. So any of you anti-vaxxers out there who are calling bullshit on these substances that they want to inject into you and your children are going to be the ones that are locked up and shackled and quarantined. Because remember, there was an executive order. And forcibly vaccinated, just like was outlined in the civilian internee manual, if you were deemed to be a risk to those around you, okay? The benefit to the many outweighs the hurt to the few. Um, so one of the things that they're really working on now is they want to get us all, and we've tied this together before also, they want to get us all into the database. They want to be able to slice and dice every bit of your personal information, and it even goes beyond where you live and how much you make now, right? We had the IRS a couple years ago now have access to all of our accounts and all of our information, A, under the guise of security, and B, under the guise of Obamacare, but it's gone so beyond that now. They want every detail about your individuality at a cellular level. I think Hecty actually dropped me this story yesterday after the show titled Meet DJ Patil, Obama's New Data Dude. So let's check him out. This is the Deputy Chief Technology Officer, and I believe he's the very first one. Maybe he's the second, but up until before Obama, we did not have a Chief Technology Officer, what you call in the industry a CTO, as part of the federal government. DJ Patil is still settling into his White House office. It's by far the most prestigious place he's ever worked, but it looks more like a bootstrapping startup than a precinct of Washington power. His desk is tidy, and on top of his overflowing bookshelf sits a watchful Pokemon Pikachu doll. Oh, I feel like so secure. Adding a touch of whimsy to the otherwise drab government issue office, propped up against his bamboo longboard, which is a skateboard. I'm glad that our White House CTO rides a skateboard to work. A hybrid trick board with a school of fish painted on the underbelly. The skateboard is more of just an emblem, a reminder of his days as a Silicon Valley technologist when he sometimes zipped across the campuses of LinkedIn and eBay. It's how he gets to work on nice days, hurtling down the streets of downtown D.C., weaving around potholes, tourists, and protesters as he feels the breeze in his dark brown hair before slipping behind the security gates of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. I can't even believe. So we hired some dude from Silicon Valley who has a Pikachu on his bookshelf and rides a skateboard. I mean, really? I thank you for this, Hecty, because I couldn't even, I guess I could believe it, but I couldn't even believe it. In February, President Obama added Patil, and this is a 2015 story, so it was just this year. Obama added Patil, a cheerful Californian who still laments the lack of authentic Mexican food in D.C., to the growing roster of Silicon Valley bred degerati who have been recruited to shore up the White House's tech capabilities. Now, that should make us afraid, like we had been saying a long time ago when they first started announcing, all the NSA spying capabilities. And these tech corporations were vehemently denying that they had anything to do with their ability to monitor every breath you take. We then saw back during the Obamacare debacle website meeting, there was actually a meeting that was going on at that same time, same people, and actually Obama then brought up Obamacare in regards to how they were going to handle all the Snowden leaks that came out and showed that a lot of these tech companies were helping the feds, and whether or not they were going to pass another CYA, cover your ass, piece of legislation to protect these tech giants. And what is so interesting is, as part of that FCC takeover of the internet, it pretty much alleviates all of those tech corporations from any responsibility, because now it is a utility. It will be required. They are all part of the government utility. And these tech giants now don't have to worry about being painted as on the side of the government because, they're victims just like we are. They have no choice. Well, bullshit. Okay. We outlined all of this, how Google, these companies, Google's been getting sprinkling dollars from DARPA, Microsoft with the antitrust lawsuit. We spent a whole show looking at that antitrust lawsuit, Bill Gates, and back in the late 1990s, early 2000s, the day he bent over and that lawsuit went away. The AT&T lawsuit, when they were being accused of giving up their back end on phone records, and there was legislation passed. Okay, Washington is covering the asses of all of these people. You know, we also looked at them covering the asses of all the pharmaceutical companies before all of this now inject or die mantra is coming full frontal at us, okay? They made sure that all of their little pawns in this game were covered and protected. So anyway, the fact that he is recruiting now all of these people from Silicon Valley to come shore up his back end and help him data mine has got to be concerning to all of us. So let's get back to this DJ Patel, I think, Patil. Okay, his official job title is Chief Data Scientist and Deputy Chief Technology Officer for Data Policy. Unofficially, he is responsible for nothing short of harnessing the extraordinary power of the federal government's hundreds of thousands of data sets. How much data is that exactly? Well, the scope of the government's collection is so staggering that no one really knows. And I actually saw a story about that yesterday after Feinstein had called for an investigation into the NSA spying on Congress. Apparently there's been meeting after 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 meeting with all the heads of all these different agencies, and Clapper joked at the fact that the only person that knows how many surveillance projects and data collecting projects are going on from the federal level is God himself. Can you fucking believe that? God himself is the only one who knows. So anyway, how much data is that exactly? Well, the scope of the government's collection is so staggering that no one really knows. That's where that comment came from, is from that story I just referenced from a couple days ago. Thanks to the explosive use of affordable mobile technology in the 21st century, data proliferates in such a frenzy that researchers estimate over 4 zettabytes. Yes, that is with a Z. That is over tera and giga and tera of it exists in the world. And to put that into context, if 1 byte equaled a character of text, the 1,250-page tome War and Peace would fit into a zettabyte about 323 trillion times. Well, I don't know if that straightened that out for me. Tell me how many times it goes to the moon and back. That'll work. The U.S. is the largest collector of data in the Northern Hemisphere. I would have to say probably in the whole world, but hey, that's just a guess on my part. And Patel's job is to be both the wielder and the protector of that data to unlock its vast potential for progress. Yes, ding, 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 while guarding against the risk of government abuse. So I'm assuming that he's on some sort of ethics board. I mean, what do we know about Patil? Now, one of the things I want to point out here, as they tell us that we have 4 zettabytes of data that we've put out there currently with all the prolific use of our mobile devices. Remember something we established over the week or so before was the dopamine reaction that is elicited when we use a mobile device, when we use computing devices, when we get an email, and how addictive that is. So that 4 zettabytes of data is dangling carrot data that they've enticed us to use these devices and then addicted us to these devices to make them indispensable in 21st century America and business and everything else so they can collect all this data. All right, let's continue. Today, government data powers some of the most basic parts of our lives. The weather app that you look at each morning before getting dressed filters statistics from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, of course, yes, that is a federal organization, into the form of a shining sun or an angry cloud. On your way to work, your local transportation office feeds information onto a screen that tells you when your train will arrive or how much longer it'll take you to drive to your destination. The Bureau of Transportation Statistics even keeps track of how horribly delayed your flight is. Yeah, and one of the things they don't mention is your morning news that you listen to is filtered through government federal agencies to make sure that the news you hear in the morning is approved and acceptable. That was my own little addition. But Patil, a guy who spent his life molding data into powerful, cutting edge products for companies like eBay and LinkedIn, wants to do much more than improve your morning commute. From day one on the job, he has spearheaded a far reaching project called, and we did about a week on this, precision medicine. How interesting is that? That was, I mentioned when they had that tech meeting about how they were going to cover their asses so they didn't lose market share or the love of the consumer once all the NSA leaks came out. Obama had an ancillary conversation with the techs, Microsoft in particular, to see if they could help him fix his disaster of the Obamacare website. So from day one on the job anyway, Patil has spearheaded a far-reaching project called Precision Medicine, a form of care that uses your DNA to dictate a personalized approach to treatment. And remember, precision medicine, quote unquote, is where we bring all of these unsavory characters under the same umbrella. The tech moguls, as well as biopharma, genomics, the Kurzweil fucking freaks out there, RNAi, Monsanto, they are all brought under the same umbrella with precision medicine, and it gives them free rein to experiment at will with manipulating and controlling biology. If we then put that under the guise of Homeland Security, holy shit, there's going to be a bioterror attack. Holy shit, we're going to have cyber terror attacks. You know, you can see how these all connect together very easily and put them in absolute and utter control over every facet of 21st century living, including us at a cellular level. Patil imagines that one day, mapping of the genome may be as routine as getting a cavity filled. Oh, doctors, yeah, like injecting you with a little 3D factory like we started out the show with. That'll build a scaffold, use its nanopores, and start manipulating your T cells on a cellular level. Doctors will be able to then tailor care based on your own genetic makeup. Cross-referencing that with statistics, i.e. the database that the government provides about the environment that you grew up in, the air quality, the water quality, the likeliness of disease, and, as Patil says, his brown eyes widening, literally, our data can save lives. Of course it can. That's how they sell it. Remember? Desperation. That's how they're going to sell the first step write-ups to the sick people, to the people that don't have any other options, to the soldiers who have suffered catastrophic injuries after going to war, the PTSD patients to get the brain implants, the cancer patients dying to get the injection of the 3D scaffold. Though Patil is focusing on healthcare for now, nearly every government entity could be revolutionized with the help of data. Now, I mean, you guys, for those of you who've listened to me for a long time, you know that that's where I spent the majority of my professional life, is in the database. So I absolutely 100% understand what they are suggesting here. And guys, this is not a pretty picture. You can do anything. Once I get data into a database, I can slice and dice it in any way from here until next week. You could pull stats, you could do dashboards, you can provide any real-time info and add to that all the surveillance that's going on in the real-time video, guys. There's not going to be one fucking second of your lives that's going to be private any longer. After collaborating, it says, with companies like Waze during Hurricane Sandy, the Federal Emergency Management Agency has invested in data-driven infrastructure that swiftly identifies areas of need during a disaster. Oh, well, I can't wait to see how that's going to work out for them, considering what a deplorable job they did in Hurricane Sandy and down in and shit, I don't remember what hurricane that was. The one down in Louisiana where they put them all into the big stadium that turned into mass mayhem. Researchers at the University of California, Berkeley, yes. And that is where Manette Napolitano went to. She is now in charge of the entire University of California college system. They also are very in bed, all of those California universities, with the federal government, researching nuclear weapons, space travel, nanotechnology. So anything that comes out of California, I usually raise an eyebrow at, just like on the East Coast with your Ivy League universities as well. Researchers at the University of California, Berkeley, are currently investigating data relating to mandatory sentencing in a criminal system, calculations that could save prisons money and reduce recidivism rates. Yes, save the private military prison industrial complex money. That sounds like a great fucking idea. Did you guys see, actually, I don't want to get off the topic. I'm not going to get off the topic. I'll save that for another day. Most recently, a study that found a correlation between climate change and violent conflict also made its way into Obama's State of the Union speech. Yes. So as we have climate change, apparently the citizens are going to get restless. Maybe that would be a good excuse to even militarize our police force more and start doing trainings on how to take out United States insurgents that have been radicalized over the freewheeling internet. I mean, it sounds fucking ridiculous, but guess what, people? It's not. Those dots have connected. Ding, ding. On the flip side, Patil must also endure that the enormous amounts of data collected under the government's watch are both secure and free from the exploitive tendencies of private companies. Now, we talked about this one too. You know, for as much as they're going to talk about your protections and your privacy, you have companies out there, especially large insurance companies, that have access to your data from every separate direction, and they are what is called a data broker. Data brokers sell your information everywhere for a profit. There were actually a couple videos at one point on Pigmine, and maybe I can find them very quickly if I can spell. Except it's not data broken. That's what happens when you type and talk. It's data broker, the data brokers. Yes, here it is. The data brokers. Oh, but I don't see a video. The data brokers. But here's a story from March 4th. Selling your personal information. And it's everywhere, people. It's already happening. Oh. I wonder what channel that was from. That was embedded. Somebody embedded a video from Pigmine and says that the channel was eliminated. So it must have been channel 3 or 4. Here's another one from Huffington Post from 2014. The data brokers, what they are and how they get control of your data. Ever hear the term data broker? What do you think that is? Think about it for a minute. Yep, you got it. An entity that goes after your data and sells it to another entity. The entity that gets that data, the broker, is called the consumer data company, and they snatch huge amounts of data from individuals all over the planet, and then they sell it. And who wants your personal information? Your information is of significant value to marketers, companies doing background checks, and in some cases, your government. So, I mean, this data that's already being collected isn't protected. It's out there. If you've ever searched your name on Google, you're going to be shocked to find out that they have so much information. They've been scraping all the public records, stuff that, yes, was public before, but that you could only get going to the individual county where that data was filed and either filing for a search and paying for it or going to that county clerk's office and digging through the dusty files yourself. Back to the story, they want to know what you like to buy, what you're most likely to buy, if you want to lose weight, build muscle, what kind of cars you like, where you went on vacation, what you eat, where you shop for clothes, what kind of diseases you have, and whether or not you've been assaulted or if you've ever committed a crime. All so they can get a solid picture of who you are. And we know that it goes even further beyond that. They also know your search history. They are scraping all of your chats, all of your conversations on your cell phone, on your standard landline, on your Skype. Anything you write about in email. Remember those pesky HIPAA records that Obama brought up in regards to Sandy Hook? I mean, those freaking HIPAA records. Keep your health information private. So if you've ever had a mental issue, that is not public information, but it should be. He says HIPAA records hide future problems. Says now you know about the data brokers, a whole new industry that reflects our evolving technology. Lawmakers have taken notice of this flourishing industry, trying to get companies to give some control to consumers over what becomes of their data, because we don't have control. You can ask them to remove your data from a website that has your address and your last 10 phone numbers and everything you bought and how old you are and who your potential friends are and family members, but they don't have to. At least one data broker makes it possible for you to see how much data is out there about you and possibly edit and update it, but that is not enough. Just how much do data brokers know about people? It says they build you up from the inside out. They start with your skeletal information, your name, your address, your age, your race, and padding the meat on from there, your education level, your medical conditions, your income, your life events, such as buying a home, getting divorced, your driving record, lawsuits against you, your credit scores, and more. One credit reporting agency even sells lists of the names of people expecting babies and those who have had newborns. And they even sell lists of people who make charitable donations and read romance novels. Data brokers can even get a hold of your income information. And you know, another big data broker, and probably the biggest one of all, happens to be Google. Remember, Google is one of those companies that has the patent and was allowed to open the microphone on your computing device, on your phone, even on your television. I think that was Samsung. But there's a couple patents out there. And then be able to send you advertisements based upon the audio that they're hearing from your location. Says this doesn't mean that any one data broker knows everything about you. It's just that a heck of a lot of personal information about you is potentially scattered all over the place. Data brokering is legal. It is a multi-billion with a B dollar industry involving trillions with a T transactions every day. But this doesn't mean that consumers without rights or power, you can indeed do a little reclaiming of your name from the data brokering industry. Sit and wait. As mentioned, lawmakers are putting the heat on data companies to make it possible for consumers to have some control. The FTC recommended in a 2012 report, well, it's kind of gotten a little farther out of the bag than 2012, that the data mining industry establish a website that reveals the names of U.S. data brokers and other relevant information. Even if you go incognito on your browser, you are not invisible. It does not hide your browsing from your employer, your internet service provider, or the websites you visit. Using VPNs and proxies might cover your IP address, but they aren't necessarily secure either, especially if they have some sort of cipher key unlock like a lot of the NSA does. There are plugins. DoNotTrackMe.com is a good one, apparently, for Firefox and Chrome. And then the last way to protect yourself is behave. Yes, just be good. Don't commit any crimes because you can't erase bad behavior from the government records. So that's their fucking solution. You know, if you go online and start searching propane tanks, which I was the other day because I need to get a new propane tank. And then I watched this video the other day about the new ISIS jihadis who were uncovered in New York City. Do you remember that? For thought crime. For entertaining some individuals on Facebook and then giggling over how great being a jihadi would be. But they were uncovered to be searching propane tanks. I'm sure I got on the top of a red list. Beep, 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 beep. She's searching propane tanks. Must be a thought criminal. All right, I want to get back to Patil now. I hope I didn't kill that story. I didn't, because I'm going to add that into the notes after. So Patil is supposed to be in the future making sure that your private data isn't exploited. It says recently, for instance, the administration is focused on educational apps tailored to individual students. By tracking students' online habits, educators can zero in on their needs. But once the data is collected under current law, it can also be sold for marketing purposes. And I think I mentioned to you guys a couple weeks ago, my daughter coming home from school telling me that they took this online test, and after the fact, they had Google doing surveys of our children as to what their thoughts were about the self-driving car. Money exchange hands there somewhere. They don't give that information away for free. By turning to Patil, Obama is placing a bet on an iconoclastic risk taker, a classic disruptor in the mold of Silicon Valley techies. His trail-blazing path to the pinnacle of data science involving, listen to this, involving skirting the rules and tilting against traditional institutions. He was suspended from school, roundly rejected by admissions offices, and befuddled HR directors who couldn't figure out where he would fit in. But through a combination of blinding intelligence, a laser-like focus on the real-world applications of science, and an uncanny ability to see alternative paths, he willed his way to the top of this cutting-edge profession. And now the question is, can he succeed inside the U.S. government, the mother of all rule-bound, what a fucking joke that is, rule-bound institutions and risk-adverse bureaucracy and stifler of innovation? Well, I'm going to call absolute utter bullshit on that, because being a risk-taker, classic disruptor, doesn't fit in the mold and skirts all the rules sounds exactly like what our government has been doing, if the truth be told. They pretend to be behind the walls of morals and doing what they're supposed to be doing. But every single report that comes out, we find out, whoops, hide the pickle, because they weren't following any type of rules. It was anything goes. He's going to fit in just fine. All right, I don't think I want to read any more of his life story here. I wanted to kind of set the stage for our new chief technology officer in the United States government, and how his primary focus, surprisingly so, not, is getting together precision healthcare and your healthcare records. So I ran across another story the other day and I briefly mentioned it for 1 second yesterday, but I really didn't get time to deal with any of it. Came out of Scientific American March 30th, and it is titled, Donate Your Health Data to Medical Science. You can now, so after we're just looking at how out of control the mining of our personal data is, we now have a project to share your most private and personal data. Like literally, you saw there was a story back from, I don't even know timeline wise, within the last year, of that chick in New York City that was collecting old chewing gum and cups from the garbage and recreating pictures of people's faces in art based upon their DNA data. Okay, your genomics data, with that information, they could recreate a you. They could take that data and recreate a you with wings and fangs if they wanted, okay? That is not data that you give away lightly. That is the ultimate data. It says you can now share your genome, health, and microbiome info and viral infection data to a crowdsourced medical research project. Oh my God, get right in line. Any dumb person who bends over that far and gives it up to the machine, I really hope that you become clone number 1. The army of clones that they develop in the back room somewhere at Plum Island number 2. Some people donate their bodies to medical science upon their death so that medical students can learn anatomy. Now, researchers have come up with new ways that individuals can contribute their bodily information to medicine while they're still alive. A nonprofit at where? Ding, 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 Harvard. Again, the place of all the robo-bees and the swarm technology and all the other crazy bullshit. A nonprofit at Harvard called the Personal Genome Project lets you share your genome sequence and health data for the use of researchers around the world. You're doing something good for science there, Susie. And scientists at Harvard, NYU, and we also, where was one of the interviews we were listening to? They were from NYU, talking about all your genomics data. And at UC San Diego, guess what? Another California university, have all teamed up to spin off what they are calling the Open Humans Network. Plug that into Google and do a search. That's some homework for the weekend. This new venture has developed 2 projects so far. The first, called American Gut, allows you to contribute data about your gut microbiome. And of course, we've dug way deep into that, and we've looked at glyphosate and how that affects that and all the cascading diseases that come along with the ingestion of glyphosate. We also discovered that your microbiome and things that get into your body can actually be influenced by things in your outside environment, such as spit from your dog or parasites from cat dung. It allows you to contribute your gut data about your gut microbiome, a hot topic of research. The second project is called Go Viral, and it lets you donate easy to collect specimens when you have the flu or flu-like symptoms. The goal is to greatly expand existing medical databases and to share them. And remember, who do we talk about that was in the back end of all the medical databases that are now going to be the doctor's advisors on disease? But IBM Watson. Yes, Watson. Back from the days of the Nazi camps, Watson. Watson that has now taken over the VA medical database, Watson. Yes, IBM that's been in the back end working with the federal government for generations, Watson. Yes, Watson. The goal is to greatly expand the existing medical databases and to share them to speed the understanding of diseases and development of treatments. And yet, one of the things that Watson is going to be doing is taking the database of known medications and trying to find cross references to give them additional black box uses for those medications. If you remember, we learned all about black box use from April and Verstein in one of their Truth or Talk episodes, talking to the Confessions of a Drug Pusher, an RX drug pusher, the author of that book. I don't remember her name, I apologize. Where they had talked about the many black box uses for different medications where they are off-use medications. So something that they'd been tested and approved for, they are no longer necessarily always being used for that. A good example for that would be like Wellbutrin, that was for depression and other types of issues. And then it became a black box use for quitting smoking aids. What does that equal? That equals more profits for the pharmaceutical companies, and the pharmaceutical companies that are all protected from class action lawsuits via Congress. And Congress that's all invested in the pharmaceutical companies on the stock market. So isn't that a pretty picture being painted? Privacy is certainly an issue, it says. The project has built-in security measures, but participants are alerted about the potential risk in sharing such information. Yeah, like giving up your DNA to the machine. Do you realize how massive that is? That's like people standing up and screaming about having to give fingerprints, let's say, to get a driver's license or something of that nature. They now do that 235-point facial recognition for driver's license photos now. I don't know if you knew that. There is a universal ID card that is on its way through the state system, through the Department of Motor Vehicles, and at some point it will all be tied into a nationwide biometrics program. Don't think that giving up your genome and having that all in a database isn't a part of that, because it is. Says there's been a decline in recent years of volunteers for medical studies, and the scientists behind the Open Human Network hope that this new project will encourage more people to provide their health data to advance medical research. For more information, go to openhumans.org. So listen to that one and weep. We can even dig more into that one on Monday if you want to. But there was another story that came out. This one was April 1st that caught my attention right along these lines. And knowing all about the Brain Project and how many entities and all the tech companies that are involved, as well as all the universities again and DARPA, scientists have launched the first open access database for what? Neurons as well. It is essentially the Wikipedia for our brain's billions of neurons. This came out of ScienceAlert.com. The brain is a busy, bustling place with around 100 billion neurons processing and transmitting information via electrical and chemical signals. And to make things even more complex, each of these neurons has about 10,000 different connections to neighboring brain cells. Over several decades, scientists have learned a lot about how different neurons function and interact with each other, but in doing so, they have also amassed a huge amount of data spread across tens of thousands of scientific papers. Making matters worse is the fact that methods of collecting and reporting this data are often inconsistent. In a bid to help scientists manage this copious amount of information and develop new methods of analyses, computer scientists at another university, Carnegie Mellon, have created an open access database indexing all of the known physiological information about neurons, which can be roughly classified into 300 types. There's also another project called the Connectome that deals with sequencing and understanding neuron connections. We also saw that story a couple weeks ago about some of those new, and I don't even know, I don't think they ever said, these super thin tubes like the width of a human hair that they can now insert into the brain for removing and adding memories. Don't think the brain research is going to be for anybody's benefit, guys. This is the thought police. They understand anything and everything about the brain. They're going to be able to manipulate the brain. This Wikipedia-like system is called NeuroElectro and can be found at neuroelectro.org. Researchers say that the site will help accelerate neuroscience research by providing a centralized resource for collecting and comparing data on how neurons function. If we want to think about building a brain, they did not just say this. If we want to think about building a brain or re-engineering the brain, we need to know what parts we're working with, says Nathan Urban, director of the Carnegie Mellon's Brain Hub Neuroscience Initiative. Quote, we know a lot about neurons in some areas of the brain, but very little about neurons in others. And to accelerate our understanding, we need to be able to easily determine whether what we already know about some neurons can be applied to others we know less about. The database was created by computational neuroscientist Srijoy J. Tripathi from the University of British Columbia in Canada. He selected more than 10,000 published papers that contain physiological data describing how neurons respond to various inputs. And you know, I don't remember his name or from what university, but one of the leading neuroscientists in the whole world came out of Canada, one of the Canadian universities, and he was recruited to Google's Brain Project. This Srijoy Tripathi from the University of British Columbia in Canada then used text mining algorithms to quote unquote read each of the papers. Well, wasn't that a technology that Google was working on, being able to take unformatted text, scan it, and then pull out real meaning from that? I believe it was. These algorithms extracted portions of the text identifying the types of neurons studied, which enabled these papers to be categorized, and the algorithms also isolated and retrieved information relating to how these neurons functioned, how the experiments on them have been conducted, and which data was recorded. In total, Tripathi was able to collect, standardize, and index data for approximately 100 different types of neurons. Says the creators, if the creators had to go through and validate this information, it would be painstaking. Their database has mechanisms that allow users to flag data that's incorrect or needs to be checked, and gives them the opportunities to include and publish new information in the paper published in the Journal of Neurophysiology. Researchers have outlined new analyses methods that can be performed using their database, such as quicker ways of comparing clusters of neurons that appear to have similar functions and triggers. They say, quote, it will be a useful resource to people doing neuroscience research all over the world. I don't even know what to say to all of this. I mean, it has gotten to the point where nothing is private, nothing is sacred. Life has been hijacked. There was another story out of phys.org about computers mimicking brain function. Researchers are always searching for improved technologies, but the most efficient computer possible already exists. It can learn and adapt without needing to be programmed or updated. It has nearly limitless memory, is difficult to crash, and works at extremely fast speeds. It's not a PC or a Mac. It is the human brain. And scientists all around the world want to mimic its abilities. Let's get back into our discussions from weeks ago about artificial intelligence and where that's going to take us, and all the warnings from different high ranking members in the tech field saying, well, yeah, there's a very big danger here. At some point, our jobs will be taken. The menial jobs will go first, and then humans will become puny mentally, and there won't really be a need for us. And didn't Elon Musk even come out and say, I think we looked at this last week, about how humans are actually going to become pets, but only the ones that aren't combative. The other ones will probably be put to sleep or in the coal mines. Both academics and industrial laboratories are working to develop computers that operate like the human brain. Instead of operating like conventional digital systems, these new devices could potentially function more like networks of neurons. Computers are impressive in many ways, but they are not equal to the mind, says Mark Hersham, the Betty and Nielsen Harris Chair in Teaching Excellence at Northwestern University's McCormick School of Engineering. Neurons can achieve very complicated computation with very low power consumption compared with a digital computer. A team at Northwestern Research, including Hersham, has accomplished a new step forward in electronics that could bring brain-like computing closer to reality. The team's work advances memory resistors, or memristors, which I think Gringo sent me a picture of one of those. We'll have to look at those. Memristors, which are resistors in a circuit that remember how much of the current has flowed through them. The research is described in the April 6th issue of Nature Nanotechnology. Ha ha! And wow, don't we come full circle right at the end of the show. It is about 20 seconds until the end, so we're going to wrap it up for now. If I had it handy with me really quick, maybe I could play you the Intel video that just came out with the hand wave that controls the robot army. Maybe we can. Make sure you guys stick around tonight. We have live radio with Nick and DB and Josh. We have this week's show with Daniela and Brandon Turbeville. I'm going to see if I can go out on this. And it might mute me. All right, guys. Yeah, I'll have to play that on Monday. Everyone have an awesome Friday. I'll catch up with you tomorrow.